Okay, so we've had a hectic evening in the studio this evening. I'm now with my final guest, and I'd like to welcome all the way from Dundalk, Bernadine Quinn. Bernadine, you're very welcome.
Aine,
thank you, Bernadine,
so
for coming over. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
we're
for
going to
having
have
me.
a nice, quiet chat.
Nice and calm.
Nice and calm, not like the rest of the programme this evening. Bernadine, you are the manager of Dundalk Outcomers.
I am, yes. Dundalk Outcomers is a lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender support service. We will be 20 years in existence next year, and I'm a founding member of Dundalk Outcomers, and probably all those years ago the reason why we decided to try and do something was because there wasn't anywhere for lesbian or gay people to meet other lesbian and gay people. So we set up.
A lot of talk of stuff at the moment, Brian. I met you last Saturday in Cavan Town Square at the launch of Cavan LGBT Vote Yes campaign.
You did, yeah.
Been speaking to you a few times, and I was telling you about that. We did throw it out there on Facebook that we'd love to have a big debate in the studio with people from every side. But I'm actually watching nationwide as well. That's not going to happen. It doesn't seem like an option. Nobody seems to want to go there, Bernadine. For very good reasons.
I suppose people do. Like I think that they will go there. I think it's probably like we've had one or two on national TV. Vincent Brown has done something.
So Sharon Violan on the Week in Politics was actually very good.
I
want to watch
yes.
that again on Play.
And Claire Byrne did one. So, but I think as the momentum cranks up coming into the last 3 or 4 weeks, I suppose more will happen nationwide, and there will be debates. I suppose really a lot of it is kind of left to the people who are. I think there's kind of two levels. There's the really political people who understand the policies and all of that, and then there are people like ourselves who are community supports and who work much more on the ground with lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans young people and older people who are not out and people who
We'll
who
talk
are
about
out.
the difference in age. But I was shocked when I said to you, Bernadine, I said, like you said, people just in small towns, maybe they don't like to come out and get involved in that kind of a head-on kind of debate. And I said, oh, Bernadine, it's time to lose the fear. And you said to me, you don't know what it's like to be a lesbian in this day and age. And I said, yes, you're right, I don't. And that's what we're going to talk about. And do you feel quite comfortable with that? And you're going to talk about it?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, now you've been talking about 20 years since the Dundalk Outcomers came out, and that's a long time. Now, first of all, I've heard it bandied about in the media. 70 years ago, we incarcerated people with mental illness. We locked them up, threw away the key. 30 years ago, it was a crime to be a homosexual. Things are changing. But tell me from your perspective, they're not changing fast enough. There's still stigma out there. There's still fear out there.
Well, here's the thing. Ireland has come a long way in a very short space of time. 20 years ago, 1993, homosexuality was decriminalised. So what's that? 22 years ago. And that's interesting because that was the time when a lot of organisations like Dundalk Outcomers started to appear. But when I came out, and I came out at about 16 or 17, somewhere around there, it was illegal to be gay in Ireland. Now, granted, it was probably much more focused on gay men. And I suppose because of it being illegal, it created a kind of underground culture, a secret culture around being lesbian or gay. And I think that that's what happened. And society put us very clearly in a place and said it was illegal and said we were all sorts of names. You know yourself, you know the names that people have called lesbian and gay people over the years. So there's a very good reason why people didn't come out as being lesbian or gay.
Exactly. Okay. Now just get back to being gay. What does gay mean? I'm going to ask you to just come on and explain it and tell me when you felt different, how you knew you were different. There's a famous bit of footage out there and it's bandied around a lot in RT, and Jerry Adams is saying, you're born gay. Is that right?
All right. I believe you're born gay. I absolutely believe you're born. It's not a choice because it's a very difficult life, and it was a difficult life. It was a much more difficult life 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So people wouldn't choose this life just to be difficult. It is too hard. It would be much more easier to conform. and it's as
a lot of people maybe have and lost the battle over
sure,
it.
absolutely, absolutely. But it's as natural for me to be a lesbian as it is for you to be heterosexual.
Okay. When did you know this, Bernadine?
When did you know you were heterosexual?
Well, I suppose when I was about 12 and I started fancying all the boys in 6th class.
And
I was ashamed for doing that.
well, I suppose I knew around about the same time. And I think it's when puberty kicks in and you start to identify with with your sexuality and with the other gender or whatever that is.
I'm sure you would have kept it to yourself. Like I was keeping it to myself for a long time. You wouldn't go around exactly telling girls, even though you're quite articulate and stuff.
It's not even that. What it is you don't really know. You don't really understand it. At 12 years of age, you don't really know. Even up to 16, my peer group of friends, were having frights when this guy would walk in. We'd go to the kids' disco in the Friary Youth Club all those years ago, and a fella would walk in, and the girls would all be all excited. Oh, he's here tonight. And I never got it. I didn't understand why there was this excitement around certain fellas, or maybe a fella would ask a girl. Back in them days, they used to say, "Can I walk you home?" And there was girls would be going, "Oh, I can't believe he's going to ask me to walk me home," blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. And I never got the importance of that, but it seemed very important. And I never really understood it, but I went along with it because that's what you do when you're part of a group. You go along with those things. So it wasn't until I had my first experience with a woman, it wasn't until I fancied a woman that I started to notice there was something different.
You fancied a woman?
Yeah.
Were you frightened? Were you afraid? Were you, what's going on here?
I was exactly the same way. No, I was exactly the same way as the girls were in the disco. I was really excited when she was around. I loved being in her company. I was fascinated by her. I didn't understand what was happening to me, but I knew that I felt different around that person than I did around others. So I suppose that...
Did you feel anywhere along the way, and give off to me if I use the wrong words, did you feel anywhere along the way you felt, this isn't normal, this isn't the same as everybody else?
No, I never felt that.
You felt normal all the way?
Always thought it was. Sometimes I say I think I came out in the womb, because I don't recall ever being afraid to tell somebody when I figured it out for myself. It wasn't that I didn't tell people because I was keeping it a secret at the start. It was... You
spoke about it openly to your friends?
No, but I remember going to a football match a long, long time ago. I played football for a women's football team, and we were having some fun on the bus, and somebody said, they were talking about who do you fancy and who do you fancy, and they said to me, who do you fancy, and I named a girl. And they fell about the place laughing. And even at that, I was kind of going, really? What are you laughing at? So I didn't really get that there was a huge difference. But then I started to. When you tell somebody and the reaction you get back, you realise then that maybe it's not that great of an idea to be saying things.
Then, Bernadine, obviously you got older and you
wiser,
and you saw what was going on and going around and all that. Where did you go from there? When you got into your mid-teens and
I remember.
You must have felt this is going to be difficult.
No, I remember reading the Sunday World, and on the problem page at the back of the Sunday World there was a tiny little column that said lesbian line and a telephone number. And I tore it out of the back of the Sunday World, and I kept it for a long time. And then one Thursday night, it was open from 8 to 10 on a Thursday night. And one Thursday night, I pulled my parents' telephone from the hall table where it was nice and fancy, and I pulled it across the floor into the sitting room, closed the door, and I rang Lesbian Line in Dublin. And when I rang Lesbian Line, they said when I answered the phone, or they answered the phone, they said, Lesbian Line, and I hung up. And that was the first time that anybody had ever said that word to me. And I knew then that I had a name for what was going on.
Okay, were you sad? Disappointed?
I was scared.
Scared?
I was scared. Because then I didn't know what lesbians did, I didn't understand, but I knew then that I was that word that people talked about and laughed about, and I knew then that it was going to be difficult.
Okay, what about your parents? Did you feel like, were you close to your mum, dad? Did you feel like telling them, just sharing it, or whatever?
I suppose I come from a family of 9. There was a girl, 6 boys, me and one more girl. And out of the whole lot of them, I wouldn't have been the closest. I would always have been very independent. And when we were kids and we used to go to visit relations on a Sunday afternoon, I always wanted to stay at home. Where my sisters, they went everywhere with my parents and loved going places with my mum. I always loved being on the street and playing and hanging out. So I never was that close to them. But I also didn't tell them for a long time. I didn't tell anybody for a long time. And then...
Were you tomboyish? And the telltale signs?
Yes, yeah. Balls, guns, football.
They were the boys?
Yeah, but that was a sign then.
You see, you're educated me there now. I'm actually wrong in saying that.
Yes, because that's not now.
Okay.
You see
Point
the
taken.
most beautiful, glamorous young women who are lesbian now. There was a time when I was coming out that there was kind of a uniform, a lesbian uniform, short hair, masculine-looking women, and that was probably a uniform, a coat of armour, I suppose, to protect you. And there wasn't an awful lot of the other kind of lesbians. Those were the non-masculine kind of people. So I suppose that was a uniform and a coat of armour that people put on to protect themselves. But yeah.
I'll just ask you one thing, just in general, Bernadine, and thanks for sharing your pretty personal stuff there. Thanks, and I hope I'm not putting you under any stress.
No,
you're well able to
not.
answer up for yourself. Don't worry. But I just have a little thing in my mind, and I never actually be able to ask anybody the question, or you never know how to put it right. But you see sometimes you see young boys, and they're talking a very effeminate. They move their hands in a certain way, and they talk in an effeminate voice and things like that, and they act a bit girly. And I say to myself, oh, that's their hormones are all wrong. Please explain that to me.
Okay, I don't think it's their well, I suppose that's scientific, and I don't know a lot about it. What I would say is that sometimes when we talk to parents now, as in my role now as a support worker for young lesbian and gay people, and I talk to parents sometimes to say, oh my God, he's going to be going around the place all camping, da-da-da.
Yeah, there is a little bit of campish about some young guys. There may not be, but there is a little bit. It's is very obvious. But okay, explain that to me,
well,
please.
it's a very small percentage of, I suppose if you think of all the famous gay men, you've got Graham Norton, you've got Elton John, you've got Alan Carr, you've got all that campness. And because of that...
You kind of know, you think you know straight away because that's what you perceive.
But that's all we've ever seen. But there are men, like, in our service, there's farmers, bricklayers, builders, carpenters, men's men, big men, hard men that have absolutely nothing camp going on about them, and they're still gay. And so there's a perception that that's what gay is, but that's the perception we get because it's what's out there.
Maybe, is it a little bit easier for the person with the camp behaviour to come out than it would be for somebody who's just downright ordinary?
Well, I think sometimes, it's considered that they're funny and they're great crack and all of that.
Them, they're great to be around.
Women hang out with them all the time and all of that, And so that can make it easy for them, and it can make it for some of them to make that next step. But there's also this thing about people thinking, I'm not gay enough, because they see that camp, effeminate man, and
Which
they think...
is accepted, really.
Yeah, and they think
accepted.
that that's what a gay man is. And so when we have some young guy come in, long scruffy hair, maybe half a beard, plays the guitar, dirty jeans...
Totally cool.
Hangs out, looks like that, and he's going, I don't fit that bill. I'm not that person there. I'm not the very camp, excited guy. I'm not gay enough, And that's not the case. The case is that what we get fed through the media is that image of gay men. And there's a much, much, much greater diversity, I suppose, of gay men.
We're becoming more aware of that now. And you're educating me now, not gay enough syndrome, like this sort of stuff. That's all interesting, and it's all coming out now. And a lot of it's coming out due to the up and coming referendum. But to move on in your story, and you realised when things are different, did being gay or lesbian, whatever way you want to put it, hold you back in any way, say career-wise, if you wanted to go to college? Like the normal thing is for young girls, they're going to meet the man of their dreams, they're going to get married, build a nice house, have kids. That's not really an option on the agenda 20 years ago or whenever for gay or lesbian. How did that affect your life and the way it turned out? Okay, well, I think you're right, and you've hit on a lot of very interesting issues there. There's a very high percentage of early school leavers in the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community because, like you said, around about 12, same for me. Research shows that people discover their sexual orientation at 12, and the first time they tell somebody is 17. So there's a whole 5 years of secondary school
where you're holding this enormous secret in and you're scared to tell anybody. And sometimes that can get bigger than you. And when that happens, you drop out of school early, you can't focus. It becomes the main thing in your life is your sexual orientation. And all of the messages we get is boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl, happy family, marriage, da-da-da-da-da. All that, that's the message that's out there across society. And you don't fit that. And so it's a very, very confusing time, and a time when for you to try and understand yourself or to not believe that, you know, you go, like I had a young woman say to me very recently, you know, I had great sex education in school, but I didn't understand any of it. And that was because it wasn't aimed at her as an audience. She was given, it's like, it's been given the wrong prescription. She was been told how she should emotionally feel towards guys. And she was sitting there taking in very good information, but it didn't fit her.
Well, thanks for the goodness. All that is changing now. And it's through organisations like yours, outcomes, LGBTs, education is going to be different. We are now accepting diversity, and even diversity within the family, nucleus, the family structure. But just to get back to your story, Bernie, and you're thinking, and the sisters have children and all happy families and stuff like that. Surely there must have been a little twinge of sadness in you. I just go, oh, my life isn't going to be like that. I'm going to grow old on my own and I'm not going to have anybody coming after me. Did you ever think that?
I never thought I'm going to grow old on my own and I'm not going to have anybody to look after me.
I think that now even. I've got a son.
I hope he's not watching. I'd be hoping I'm going to grow old on my own. When you're working my job and you talk to people all day, you're actually happy to be on your own for a while. I think that what I did when I discovered I was lesbian, after that phone call where they said lesbian line, and I realised what I was, a couple of weeks later I recalled that number and I had a conversation with a woman on the other end of the line. And
enlightening.
Yeah, I told her how I felt and what I thought and all, and I said to her, do you think that this is what's going on for me? And she said, well, it sounds like, I wouldn't know for definite, but it sounds like it. And after that phone call I went, this is what I am. And at that point in my life, I probably put away a lot of those dreams. You know, I probably...
But you seem to me like one of the sensible people, Bernadine. You kind of approached it all dogmatically and pragmatically and were sensible about it.
I think now, looking back, I can say I did. But I went through the heartbreak and I went through the scared times and I went through
where you can see now what's happening in modern day, where people become addicted to drugs to lift the pain, to depression, to suicide. Dave's saying there in my ear, like a lot of people over 40 who have the fear, as we mentioned, of coming out, can't cope with it. They'd rather end their own lives than live with this lie. You know,
when Dundalk Outcomers started, we had 4 or 5 different groups going, and one of the biggest support groups in the lesbian and gay community across the country was Gay AA, Alcoholics Anonymous for lesbian and gay people.
By the moment
it was an enormous group of people, and the reason behind it was, and it was a secret addiction in lesbian women, because if you lived in, let's just talk, I've driven over here tonight from Dundalk, and sometimes driving through places I think, God, imagine being lesbian here. Imagine being lesbian in Scotstown or in Clonus or on your own 40 years ago, 30 years ago.
Thing you would think.
And not able to find somebody else that's lesbian and having an ache to have an emotional relationship with somebody.
Which let's face it, folks, most people do. Nobody wants to be alone.
Everybody wants to have...
If you put the dog outside, he wants to come back into the house to sit beside you. Like,
everybody wants to have some kind of an emotional connection with somebody. And it was easier to just get drunk and go and have that relationship with a man or whatever, or to go home from the pub with different guys and stuff like that, but just get so drunk that it didn't matter. It didn't care that you were doing that. So that was a huge part of women's lives. And men that stayed at home ended up in a situation where they never really had anybody else around, lonely, isolated, took to the bottle, drank a lot. So there was a lot of alcoholism. A lot
of suicide, I would say, that we don't know the reason why.
We never know. No. We never know, but we can be sure that there has been.
Okay, now to touch on another little subject, people who may have married somebody and said, okay, who are in denial with themselves and are in a monogamous heterosexual relationship, but they know otherwise. Like that is out there as well.
I think it doesn't happen as often now as it used to. But like the first woman,
there would have been pressuring people to marry years ago.
Well, the first woman I had a relationship with was a married woman, and she said
she was trying to conform.
She said, I knew standing at the altar I was doing the wrong thing, but the pressure from both sets of families was enormous, and it was the done thing. She came from a big family, he came from a big family, and one after the other, they reached a certain age and they got married and they had children. And she said, it was the pressure on me to conform, to do the same. I did it. And then I suppose maybe
so Bernadine,
17
you're saying
years.
That's not going to work. That kind of thing definitely.
I think
most times won't work.
It comes back to the surface. Yeah. If you're fighting against your true self.
And
that's the thing. Yeah,
problems.
I suppose if you can try to change it around on you and think of you having to live a life with a woman, having to have an intimate relationship with a woman, and you not happy there, knowing full well that you love a man.
Certainly would have a lot of psychological problems.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so you're working now in Dundalk Outcomers, and you are isn't that right? You're a counselling and helping group, and maybe getting young people information, and so that they don't have to go through what you went through. They don't have to drown themselves in the bottle and all of things. It should be all easier, Bernadine, but yet people aren't willing to come out and sit down opposite each other and talk their points. Isn't that sad?
I think it the biggest person that you have to convince that it's okay to be gay to is yourself. Okay, so you could be saying to me, Bernadine, it's grand. Like, I accept you. You could be my boss in work, and you could be saying to me, I accept all gay people. I think gay people are there's no problems or anything. And you can tell me that till I'm blue in the face. But till I accept me for who I am, I'm not going to be able to tell you who I am. And you might be saying, it's so obvious that Bernadine's a lesbian. It's so obvious that she has a girlfriend, blah, blah, blah. But she won't say it. And it's because the fear is so ingrained in me. And here's the thing that the fear is. It's fear of disappointing the people around you. It's fear of being ostracized, losing your friends, your family. I dealt very recently with a 50-year-old woman, an independent woman, her own car, her own home, and she was lesbian, and she didn't want to tell her only surviving brother that she was lesbian. And the reason why was because she was afraid that his wife would stop her from seeing her niece and nephew. And she was
the fear still is
the
there,
fear of being rejected, and she couldn't be convinced that her brother adored her and loved her enough for that not to happen. She was terrified.
That's so sad, isn't it?
So, and you would think at that stage in her life, an independent woman, she doesn't need her brother in her life. Technically, of course she needs his love, but she doesn't need him on a day-to-day basis. But she still was too scared to say to him, "This is who I am."
Bernadine, you appear to me, and I feel from you that you are very you're in a happy place now. You're accepting of yourself. You are what you are, and that's it. And that things have turned around and come good. Now, if there's anybody out there watching and they are battling with that, what would you say to them? You can talk to the camera. That's your camera.
Okay.
You can
I would say
you can
to
talk
them,
to the camera and you tell them exactly.
First of all, I would say you're dead right. I am in a great place, and I'm very accepting. I'm very, very proud of the fact that I'm a lesbian woman.
Well, you look happy to me.
Oh, I am absolutely happy.
And happiness comes from within. Sorry, I keep rambling on there, but
absolutely.
You're talking about accepting this, but accepting lesbian, it's the same as accepting if you were whatever's wrong with you. If you're an alcoholic or manic depressive, you have to accept everything.
Well. Yeah, there's a kind of a difference. Yeah, there's a kind of a difference.
Pick me up on that, okay. I'm
there's
getting
not
muddled
something
now, but
wrong.
go ahead.
When you're different, you have to accept your difference.
Okay.
You have to accept your difference. If there was somebody out there tonight who's looking at this program and is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or thinks they may be questioning, I would ask you to make contact with somebody that you trust, somebody that will help you. It might be a school counsellor, maybe a counsellor that you go to, maybe an aunt, an uncle, somebody who you can trust that will get you in contact with somebody who can help you. We have this amazing thing that we call peer support, and it's just talking to people who are the same as you. And when you get the opportunity to talk to somebody that's the same as you, it lessens your fear and your burden about it, because you start to realise you're not the only one. They reckon 10% of the population are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. So every time you see 100 people in a room, 10 of them will fit that description of being LGBT or T. So don't be afraid. There's not a whole lot to worry about. And there is definitely plenty of supports out there for you, and things have changed dramatically. And there's a great life. And if we get a yes vote on the 22nd of May, you can end up going ahead and getting married and living a life just exactly the same as your sisters and brothers can do.
Well done, Bernie. Very inspirational. Now, just on one last line.
Okay.
If you want somebody to vote yes, just one line. Tell them to vote yes, why they should vote yes.
Wow, there you have to put me on the spot.
You can get yourself out of the spot now. Go on.
I think you should vote yes, because it will make Ireland a much better country. I think our former President Mary McAleese said it so well the other day, that if we want the Ireland that we want to live in, that is a fair and equal Ireland, then I think you vote yes if that's what you want.
Okay, inspirational. Well, there you are, folks. There you can see Bernadine and how happy and how accepting she is and how happy she is from within. And that's great, and you can be like that too. Bernadine, I appreciate very much you travelling all the way over from Dundalk this evening in the traffic.
Thank you for talking to me, Aine. I enjoyed it.
Great to hear your story.